Those who know the truth must teach, and a speaker of truth has no friends. African Proverbs. Our core problem is that the ignorant and mentally enslaved ones are totally ignorant of their own ignorance and mental enslavement. And they fight fiercely against those of us who tries to educate them and free their minds. While to the contrary, the intelligent awakened ones have been made self-doubting, and they therefore remain silent. This silence allows the false belief held by the ignorant and mentally enslaved ones to prevail throughout our communities, thus keeping the masses mentally enslaved. Mental slavery is the worst form of slavery because it makes its victims defend the mental enslaving lies that have been indoctrinated into their minds by their oppressors, while making enemies of their own people that attempts to free their minds from those lies. The mental enslaved ones literally functions as wardens of their own mental prisons. Nonetheless, I'd rather lose mentally enslaved Black friends for telling the Black liberating truth than to endorse false beliefs that literally insults my own intelligence in order to hold on to mentally enslaved Black friends. The truths are that we did not make the N-word ours, and using it does not empower us. We are not our own worst enemies. Our worst enemies are still oppressive forces. We are not being controlled by the Willie Lynch myth. That silly myth presents what would in fact be the least plausible and least effective method used for controlling generations of millions of people. It's simply absolutely not how true brainwashing is achieved. And the belief that a alleged holy book that was brutally beaten into the blood-soaked minds of our enslaved ancestors will now set us free makes absolutely no sense at all. None whatsoever. And a holy book that strongly condones slavery, written by ungodly Romans in the year 325 AD, that routinely engaged in massive orgies and death sports, is inherently totally disqualified from containing the true words of an infallible God. And we, African Americans, are in fact Africans. Millions of DNA analysis have scientifically confirmed our African identity. We must stop believing in things that literally insults our own intelligence. Our people are drowning in disinformation, and it's all by deliberate design. White propagandists have spread lots of disinformation into our communities. Because our oppressors knows that in order for us to develop the proper counter strategies that are necessary in order to liberate ourselves, we must first gain a clear and accurate understanding of our plighted condition. Because if our understandings are kept flawed, then all of our liberating remedies and strategies that stem from those flawed misunderstandings will also remain flawed. Therefore, they keep us drowning in disinformation that keeps our understandings of our plight and condition flawed, thus preventing our ability to liberate ourselves. Many of our people are afraid to learn the truth because our identities are now so deeply connected to those indoctrinated lies. But we must learn the truth in order to truly liberate ourselves. The following reveals the hidden truth that white oppressive forces don't want us to ever learn. The truth of our plighted condition is that unlike at the conclusion of World War II, when the Jewish Holocaust ended and the US and the UN contributed massive financial support to rebuild the lives of the Jews, there was no moral obligation to do the same for we Africans. Although the African Holocaust lasted hundreds of years longer, resulted in millions of more deaths, and more greatly decimated the African culture than the Jewish Holocaust had done so, When slavery was abolished, America, Great Britain, and the many other white nations that benefited from their brutal exploitation of Africa felt no moral obligation to restore the culture of the Africans. They instead focused on their own self-interest by socializing Africans. Socializing is when the oppressors exploit their monopoly over information that are systematically fed into the minds of the oppressed to manipulate the oppressed to think and behave in ways that are against their own interests and that instead serve the interests of the oppressors. There are 4 ways to effectively socialize an entire generation of people: by what they're taught, by what they see, by what they hear, and through constant repetition. Because the white society controls the education we're taught, the media images that we see, and the societal narratives that we repetitively hear, receive, they've exploited these combined factors to covertly socialize the collective minds of the Black masses to think in ways that benefits their society without most of us even realizing it. Because the oppressors controls most of the content that are systematically being fed into the collective minds of the Black population, they've exploited this scenario to socialize the collective minds of the Black masses to think in ways that are beneficial to their society. To not have socialized Black people would have placed the white society in direct conflict of its own self-interest, especially given that the white society's long history of brutally mistreating Black people throughout history. Given this fact, the white society therefore accordingly secretly socialized Africans. It's the true reason why many of us now perceives ourselves as being our own worst enemies and reveres and defends our oppressors in spite of such a brutally horrific history to the contrary. By socializing our minds, they've shifted our collective aggressions away from their society and have redirected it against ourselves. It's how they prevent us from unifying against them. It's how they protect their society from massive unified Black retribution. Moreover, the socializing process is being reinforced unrelentingly and daily through ongoing media propaganda campaigns. There are presently men that specialize in psychiatry and propaganda that works unrelentingly behind the scenes, manipulating the collective minds of the Black masses. These men govern our minds, molds our opinions, and shapes our perceptions in ways that protects and serves their society. The white media's unrelenting negative depiction of Black people that amplifies the negative to the point that it distorts our reality is so much more than just biased media reporting. It is actually an insidious Black racially demoralizing, divide and rule psychological warfare campaign. Demoralize, divide and rule is a method of maintaining control over a targeted population through constant and unrelenting demoralization in order to create self-hate and division between the targeted population. This demoralize and divide psychological warfare system is being deployed like a massive media marketing campaign that constantly subjects Black people to receiving only the fraudulent and worst narratives about ourselves. Within this system, fraudulent Black racially demoralizing propaganda is being pumped unrelentingly into the unsuspecting minds of the Black masses without being counterbalanced by an equal amount of positive and affirming Black racially affirming information. This one-sided flow of negative information being directed towards the Black population are directly designed to demoralize us, divide us, and shift our collective aggressions away from their society and redirect it against ourselves. This is our hidden reality. It also attacks the core foundation of what bonds us as a people, and we can then be ruled over forever. It's a well-documented and well-proven psychological warfare system used for controlling large targeted populations. Throughout world history, oppressors have often deployed demoralizing divide and rule tactics against the oppressed because creating self-loathing and division amongst the oppressed makes them much easier to control. This nefarious practice was never abandoned. It's the warfare tactic that white oppressive forces presently deploys against the black population. It's so elaborate that it goes beyond the comprehension of most people. The general population doesn't know what's happening, and it doesn't even know it doesn't know. That's a quote from Noam Chomsky. This isn't some feeble-minded conspiracy theory, as so many of us have been socialized to think and respond. It's absolutely the truth. It's hidden knowledge. Here's the reason why it's being done. There's an immense concern of massive unified black retribution that secretly exists amongst those white nations that have brutally oppressed black people and have grossly exploited Africa's natural resources for over 400 years. There's also an unrelenting commitment towards the preservation of white social dominance over the black population. This immense concern of massive unified black retribution and unrelenting commitment towards maintaining white social dominance over black people resulted in white propagandists socializing the minds of the black masses to think in ways that serves and meets those agendas. The white society's exploitation of Africa has also provided with an era in which it has flourished most throughout history. To allow this era to end would be directly against the interests of the white society, especially given that the white society's dependence on Africa's natural resources is forever. They instead socialize Africans to think in ways that allows them to continue the exploitation and subjugation of we Africans without any black resistance. White social scientists describe what they've done to black people as merely instilling a value system into the collective minds of the black population that makes us adhere to the authority and existing infrastructure of the white dominant society. It's how they secretly protect their nations from massive unified black retribution. The enslaved African of the 21st century are those who cannot overcome their socialized minds. One love and peace. It's time to wake up.